Okay, well, I'll get going. And if you have any issues or can't see a slide, just let me know. Shoot a message in the chat. But hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this evening. My name's Saber Pictuli, and I'm a lawyer with First Peoples Law. I'm also Mi'kmaq. I'm from a small First Nation in northeastern New Brunswick. I've been on this file for a couple of years now. Since I started with First Peoples Law about 2 years ago. Two of our senior counsels on this file are Carrie Young and Cynthia Westaway, which you may have seen speak in other videos or in other engagements. We have a little bit of a full agenda, but shouldn't take too long. We're looking at 4 different laws, talking about some of those key principles, um, key definitions, and the impacts of these laws. I do a rather high-level overview, but all of the laws are available on the website. Justine's going to drop the link in the chat, so you can pull them up and have them on your screen if you'd like to go through them as we talk. I'll pause at the end of each law for questions or comments. Really encourage any feedback on thoughts, even if you like them or don't like them. All feedback is good feedback for us to take back and consider. Before I jump in, I'm wondering, Chief Brandt, if there's anything you'd like to say.
Mostly just thank you for everybody for attending. These laws are near the end product of about 2 years of work, a little bit more. Even the process for that started before then. I mean, from day one of this mandate in August 2021, we knew the community wanted solutions, actual real on the ground solutions to things like the dumping that was going on, the environmental contamination, all of the safety issues regarding the roadways and everything like that. Council, we knew this was something that had to be dealt with. We struggled for a while to try and find some avenue to address all of this. And fortunately, when we were introduced to First Peoples Law, they brought a lot of their experience in working on lawmaking with other communities across the country to the table. And that really did open up and reveal the options to us that, this is something that could be done. It doesn't take a 10-year process to complete. It isn't something that, you know, is going to be a slog every single day where you have to like negotiate with the government on the minutia of like arcane legalities. No, this is something that communities across the country are doing every day and successfully. So, with that in mind, please take a look at what Saber's going to present with an open mind. Consider it. Like she said, if you have any questions or comments, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's something pops out to you, you just want to know a little bit more or want to know how it interacts with something else you're thinking about, just ask. That's what we're here for. And other than that, I'll turn it over to Saber.
Awesome. Thanks, Chief Brandt. I do just want to plug in that there's also the communications email. I'll put it on the screen at the end of this presentation, but we'll also put it in the chat. If you would rather give feedback over email, just shoot an email to communications@ganastage.ca with any of your feedback, and it would be kept confidential there. So before I jump in, just quickly, there's 4 laws we're going to talk about. So there's the Council Code of Ethics, there's the Trespass Law, there's the Emergency Measures Law, and the Land Protection Law. We're also going to talk about registering for one feather really briefly, and then we'll wrap up with any final reflections. Chief Brandt touched on this a little bit, but we started working with Ganasatake in December of 2022, and we started working within this modern governance and best practices workshop where we worked with MCK in leadership and management to introduce governance practices that are being implemented across Canada and First Nations. We had a number of workshops with different Ganasatake leadership, management, staff, and from there, we were able to get some feedback. And through that process, over the following year, we drafted the KLMP, or the Ganasatake lawmaking process. So that was then shared with community for community input and feedback in July of 2024. In November 2024, we started those community engagements. And then in February 2025, the KLMP was officially passed and came into effect in February. So the KLMP is the Ganastari lawmaking process. It's available publicly. It's on the First Nation Gazette. It's on the website here. It just outlines and helps codify some of the processes that Ganastari already had undertaken under the Governance Code and the Governance Act, or so Kilga and the Custom Electoral Code and those pieces, and helps unify how laws could be, how the process of lawmaking could really unfold. Under the KLMP, we've now developed these 4 draft laws, and that brings us to here into April 2025 and now May, where the draft laws were shared in April, and now we're doing the engagement sessions. So just wanted to give a little bit of an overview of the timeline that we've been working on this. When you open the laws, so when you open any of the laws or the lawmaking process, you're going to be met with the first 2 pages, which is the whereas clauses. These whereas clauses are what we call the legal foundations or the legal authorities to enact those laws. So you'll see there's a number of legal foundations in each of these laws. They're all mirrored, so they're all the same. But there's really 5 core pieces here. So we have the first one, which is the inherent rights of the Ganyukahaga, so the inherent right of MCK and Ganastage. So this is a huge piece. This is the foundation of the lawmaking authority. Then we have the Constitutional Act of Canada in 1982. This is where Section 35 was codified, which recognizes and affirms Indigenous and Aboriginal rights. And that's the supreme law of the land. So now we're layering our legal jurisdictions or legal authorities to be making laws, enforcing laws, upholding laws. We also have a few international instruments that we like to use. We have UNDRIP, which was then adopted in Canada under the UNDRIP Act, and that's the United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Then we have, on a more macro level, the Governance Act, or KILGA is known. We call it the Governance Act, but you may know it as KILGA and you may know it as Bill S3, which is what it would be titled before enactment. We also have the Governance Code, and then the final piece there is we have the Indian Act as well. So these are all the legal foundations that kind of layer up together the ability to enact laws, enforce laws, and uphold laws. You'll see in those whereas clauses, they're again mirrored in all of the laws, so please go ahead and open one, read through them to see. The first law I'm going to talk about is the Code of Ethics, and this came out of recommendations from our initial workshops. It also comes as a direct reflection of the Custom Electoral Code that says there is a Code of Ethics, and so that was an important piece for us to uphold here. The Code of Ethics is really about promoting ethical leadership and accountability. It's about inspiring and setting standards for leaders and new leaders. It's about creating a culture of wellness, and is really trying to set an example, so holding a standard here. In all the laws, you'll see Section 2 and Section 3 are the application and the key terms or the definitions. This is where in every law or legislation, you'll see key terms you use in this piece of legislation defined. So in this specific one, we have things like conflict of interest that are defined, we have immediate family defined, and we have significant interest. So those are key terms that you'll need to know the definition of when you're reading the law. So they're outlined in the first couple of pieces of the section, excuse me. This law is unique from all the other laws because this law only applies to elected council members. So it's a specific law to uphold elected council members to a unified standard. And it's important to note that this is different than our human resources policies. So human resource policies in any organization or a band, the band is the employer and employees then have to abide by the human resource policies. Whereas elected council members, human resource policies don't apply to elected council members very often. And so it's important to have something codified that helps set that standard. And this is where the Code of Ethics comes into place. Excellent. In Section 4 of this law is the first meaty section of the law. You'll see that we have leadership roles and responsibilities. I believe there's about 17 provisions under there, so highly recommend you opening the law, taking a look at it if you haven't had a chance to, but in some, The law really requires that council members must represent MCK with integrity and unity, negotiate, advocate, and engage with community, attend meetings, and vote in the best interest. And the best interest of the community is a legal standard that's been applied across Canada, and there's a precedent set around that. So we know what the best interest is. It's what a reasonable person in a reasonable standard would do. They must lead portfolios based on experience and skills, and they must provide quarterly community reports. So there must be at least a quarter report, so 4 times a year, going back to the community saying, these are the things that we're doing. If you haven't taken a look at this, please do. It's really interesting. This, again, isn't anything above and out of the ordinary. It is to set a standard so you're able to govern in accordance, and then any new elected council members coming in are able to uphold that standard, as well as anyone leaving the council as well. So it's a way to have continuity and a standard that's already set for the staff.
Hey,
The second
Wendy has a
piece
few
here.
questions.
Sure.
Hi.
Hi, Wendy.
Yeah, everybody can hear me or just you?
I think everyone can hear, right? Yes, everyone can hear.
Okay. If you could just take it back to the beginning,
Of the Code of Ethics law?
just take it back a few slides and I'll let you know where. I think it had to do with, take it back another one. No, one more. Right.
The timeline?
Okay, so here when it says the community engagement on the draft was held in November 2024.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you have these answers, but how many people were in attendance to that meeting?
For the KLMP, I'm not sure. I don't have those numbers off. I think we did three engagements, Chief Brand.
How many people altogether were in attendance, like with the community engagement in November is what I'm asking. Like how many community members did you have participating?
I don't have the answers to that right off the top of my head, but we can definitely send it
get that. So if I understand correctly, here in February, it says the KLMP was officially passed and came into effect.
Yeah.
Passed in what sense?
It was passed at council in a band council resolution.
Okay, so that's what I think where my concern is like, I want to know, I'm curious to find out how many people you were able to get to in order for council to pass it. I'm not, like, I'm coming in here, I have no planned agenda, I really want to know what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in order for me to continue with this process, like, it's like if you had 15 people come in all is what I'm saying, then there's a problem because it's not everybody that can, for whatever reasons, obviously the communication, if it's that way, there's something wrong with the communication or there's something wrong that people don't want to reply. But it's in my opinion, it's not enough to pass a band council resolution on this. So that's my comment on that. So if you could let me know how many people actually participated in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can put together maybe a note on that, Chief Brandt, and send that out even on social media to you, Wendy, so that's no problem. And this is good feedback too, just on the draft laws. Like the KLMP is now in effect, but these draft laws have not been passed, and any feedback you have around the draft laws and consultation requirements and those pieces, that's great too.
Yeah, so if I understand correctly, it's in law. And when you said that is in law to do something, and the draft laws. So what we're viewing tonight, all the different laws that you named,
those
are
are
you
the draft
just
laws.
informing us? You're just informing us of the draft. So there's still room for change in the draft, right? It's
Yeah,
not
very much so.
Okay.
Yes, very much so. And this is the perfect time for all of your thoughts to be shared on these draft laws, or if you hate them, or if there's different laws that you would like as a priority. This is all very good information for us to receive back.
So I don't know how many meetings this has been, and I don't know if the participation has been as low as it is here, but that's a huge concern for me right off the bat. Like, it's concerning. These are laws that are going to affect the community and everybody living in the community. And if you're not somehow reaching at least, like giving yourself some type of majority or whatever account, even if it has to be, like I don't know. I don't even know how many people come to elections. I think it's like 300 or something. But if you put at least a figure, if you set a number, and this can apply for everything in the future for in terms of participation, so that if you want something to pass, you have to have at least an X amount of people replying or, voting on it or etc. So this right here, this meeting right here with just myself and one other participant besides the people that are running it in communications is just concerning because it's worrisome. It's worrisome.
I think I agree with you, Wendy, on that. But you kind of have to look at or I think the thing to do is to look at the laws, the actual wording of the laws and what they're to address, and make the decision of if what they're addressing and how they're doing it is of concern. Because, like I said, like we started this process because we knew from the very beginning of the mandate. Like I remember specifically, there were loads of trucks coming in to dump all of the construction waste at GNR. Like within our first days of mandate, even beforehand during the election, we knew people wanted that to stop. They had been everything. There had been community meetings organized by like people. I remember holding a few myself. The previous council at the time was discussing this. Everybody was of one mind that other than the persons doing it, that the dumping at GNR had to stop. So, and you look at uh, how much community involvement was there in having GNR or anybody else bring in contaminated materials. So, like, look at it that way too. Like, the things we're trying to fix in the community have zero community consultation. The people that are doing the things that we're trying to address here don't come to the community to ask them, like, how's the best way to fix this? What's the best way to address this problem? Like, the goal and intent of these laws isn't to, you know, harm Ganasadaga. When you read, say, the environmental law and it says, nobody is allowed to deposit toxic material on Ganasadaga land, I don't see a downside to that.
I understand what you're trying to say here, Brent, and thanks for answering that. But the thing is that it's 4 years now, and what people are seeing, is that you're wanting to pass something at the 11th hour. Some people are questioning as well too, like the legality of council because of the date that was passed. So it raises a lot of questions. It raises questions, and there has to be trust. And I think that some of that is lacking because of some actions that were taken. I mean, I wouldn't want to be in your place, honestly. It's not a place that I would want to be. I worked at council long enough to understand the dynamics that happened there.
Yeah.
But something needs to change in order for us to move forward. I agree that there needs to be certain laws on certain aspects, and I will continue to watch the presentation. I just wanted to express my concern from the beginning in terms of participation and in terms of some other stuff. That I've heard so far. I needed clarification.
I totally understand that. I totally understand. And like, this is the perfect place to let's ask the question regarding legality and time frame. Like we know that Amanda and some other people have been saying because it's the end of the mandate somehow that impacts the legality of laws being passed at this time. It's a fair question, and it has an answer. Obviously, the question is yes, it's possible, or no, it's not possible. So like Is that something you can speak on, Saber?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that rests with the idea of your caretaker period. And I think there's some confusions around that this is new business and we're trying to do something that wasn't in the works prior to the end of the mandate. But this has actually been in the works for the last 2 years. These are all laws that we've been working on. And I see the optics of the fact that we're doing engagements right now during the end of the mandate, optically presenting some concerns, but really it just rests that over the last 2 years, there's been a number of things we've had to undertake. The KLMP being one, which had a really substantial time period, and then now these draft laws. And through that entire process, we've been drafting these laws, trying to get them to this place. It just happens to be coincidental that they're at this time and place now. But it's important to note too that these are preliminary drafts, and we're getting preliminary feedback in the first stage of trying to get to execution. So I think there's some misconception that we're here saying these laws are coming to effect on this date already, and that's not the conclusion we've reached at this point in time. And I can't speak to that. That's council's mandate, but I can speak to the fact that there's nothing preventing us from continuing with old business, and your governance, your safety, laws that uphold those pieces are not new business. Those are very old businesses, and we're trying to get you to a space where some laws could help protect the community.
I understand what you're saying, but when you look at it this way, and perhaps I don't know, someone didn't get the flyer for the community engagement, or I'm saying that there's communication here that needs to be increased. Yeah. So when you're looking at it like that, and then you come to this, I've seen the posts on Facebook and everything. And when you passed, when the KLMP was passed, was that posted? Was there a copy of the band council resolution posted so the community could see it? Just like, I know you have answers to this, but from me looking in at this meeting tonight, those are the concerns that I have. So to a lot of people, if they didn't participate or didn't know about this, not everybody has Facebook. I don't know if you guys are still mailing things out. I know I don't get anything in the mail. So are you reaching the people? And now you have this. So I guess the next question I have for you is your goal to process all these laws and have them in effect before the end of your mandate, by whichever date you think your mandate is?
Ideally, yes. I mean,
yeah. So, I mean, there's that concern as well too, because if it's really something the community wants, it doesn't matter if it's your mandate or the next mandate, right?
It matters in that. It matters in that there's the actions prompting the laws are continuing. The environmental damage being done to the community has been ongoing throughout the entire mandate. I mean, I put myself in front of a truck once. I got pushed 40 feet and had to lay myself in front of the ground to stop it. And even then, the people bringing in were telling it to drive over me. This stuff is ongoing.
Yep.
So, the need to stop it is there. It's not like there was an instance of somebody bringing something in 4.5 years ago and there's been nothing ever since. No, it's every single day. We can literally probably measure the amount of contamination being brought into Gunnistaga by the ton, per week. It's ridiculous, the amount of stuff coming in.
We all know just by the number of trucks.
Yeah.
That were coming into the community, okay. But that has changed enormously. I mean, even the residents of the town of Oka, wanted something to be done with that as well too. If you're aware of trucks coming in but I'm not aware of it. So as a community member, I don't see that. You're saying they still come in. So my point is that yes, we have to protect the land and we have to protect that, the environmental aspect to this. but it doesn't have to be rushed either as well too, because if all this is coming from community members, they're still going to want it to continue. And they're the ones that are going to tell you what it is that you have to do, what it is that the community wants. You know, we put you in position to sit on the council office to and your mandate is to do what we want or we would like you to do, right? So as I'm saying, so whether it's now or whether it's the next one, if it's really the community that wants to pass this, the opportunity should still be there. So I think the fact that you want to make it law before the end of your mandate has a lot of people concerned. If I didn't give a crap about this, I wouldn't be at this meeting.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm expressing as a community member what I believe is going on from what I read, from what I hear. So, and you know, perhaps both sides have a valid point here, but I'm giving it to you the way I see it.
Yeah.
But anyways.
Well, I understand. I think personally, I put more weight on the protection of things rather than maybe more than other people. But that's just me. You know, we've been talking to the community, we've been making presentations, we have community reach out to us at the band council, call in, make reports of things they see, whether it's contamination, whether it's bad behavior, people in the community, whether it's, you know, all kinds of traffic, everything touching on the laws. So yeah, on council we probably have a lot more visibility of what's going on. We don't have a complete picture, but we probably have as much of a complete picture of what's going on as aside from the people actually doing it, you know. Aside from the people, like, we don't know what they have scheduled to come in tomorrow. They're the only ones that know that, and people working for them. But of the people that don't know, we probably have the most visibility, and it's from all sides for that. And like, you know, it's a fair assessment to say that our mandate was to stop these things. I know for myself, I was very clear on what I ran on. Everybody who voted for me knew that I was running to stop all of this stuff. I think I had like 300 and something people that agreed with me, or whatever my votes were, 329, I think. That when I said, like, well, you know, one of the most important things is stop the environmental damage. One of the most important things is to get something in line to increase safety in the community and whatnot. You know, there is a clear number, you know, at least for that.
Yeah, so
It's not carte blanche. It's not carte blanche. I understand that. But I would say that, you know, there is a mandate, and like, I could probably count on a good number of those 300 people being in agreement with this. So, do I think there's 300 people in opposition? I don't. Maybe, but I would doubt it.
I also do just want to add a couple of things here, if that's okay, Chief Brandt.
Yep.
And maybe Justine has a little bit more details on this, but in terms of just the outreach of communication, I think it's important to highlight that council has taken this very seriously. There has been a mail out sent when the draft laws were initially being posted, letting people know of the upcoming workshops. I think that the struggle there is not everyone's addresses are up to date on the files, or emails and phone numbers and those pieces. And that's a catch-22 piece that many communities are always struggling to keep updated with member information. But there has been a mail out sent. We did meet 3 times virtually. We did meet 2 different days in person. We asked people to register in advance for these things. We put out a notice 30 days before these things were happening. Unfortunately, it's been low turnout for the meetings, but our video recording, I believe, was watched a few hundred times by exclusively members. So we ensured that all of the recordings were posted to members only, and they've been reviewed quite a bit. We've kept the lines of communications open with the communications emails, and we're consistently brainstorming on how we can increase participation. Like, I just wanted to emphasize that that's never at any point fallen off the weight side of being a priority. And happy to have any feedback to Wendy if you have any ideas on how to increase that in the future.
I'm not taking what was already done, but you're saying your council has put a lot of effort in trying to reach the people, and the people are still not coming. There's a problem. There's a problem, right?
Maybe.
So I'm not gonna pinpoint what the problems are. Everybody's got different issues in the community, but you need the backup from the community to be able to do these things. If you're not getting a full representation of the community, then to me it doesn't hold the weight that it should. I haven't seen your laws. I don't know if I'm agreeing with them or not. Okay, that has nothing to do with like what the actual laws are.
But
Getting
that's
the
sort of
people
what they should be based on. That's
Mhm.
like it's, you know, if the house is on fire, you don't, you know, a fireman comes to put out the house, you don't ask them like, you know, is that local water or whatnot.
I understand what you're saying, and you're using the analogy of a fire, but other people can look at council and the breakup of council as an analogy of I don't know, a divorce or something, you know. So at our end, when we're looking to you guys, and you guys are not of one, I don't know, I'm not going to say opinion, but if you're not working together, all of you, that, you know, it makes us question issues as well too.
Mm. I understand. It's a separate point. It'd be nice if, you know, the matter at hand could be looked at on its own and everything. If people could put aside loyalties and everything and look at the question being presented on its own and see if the solution that we're presenting, you know, is, you know, being presented in good faith, is it effective, will it solve it, you know. I mean, you can look at a document or an option being presented to people and based on its own merits determine if the people presenting it to you are acting in good faith. I mean, that's essentially what a lack of trust is asking. So I would say people should look at the document and say, are we doing anything? Is there any hidden agenda on this? I mean, the wording is very clear. What it's addressing is very clear, as we'll see with Saber's presentation. It's very, we've made the effort to make it as not simple, but as clear cut as possible and as to the point as possible, so that there isn't a lot of legal jargon to get lost in. It's very to the point for each law. Maybe with that, like, we can start up.
Yeah.
Or continue where we left off.
Yeah, absolutely. Wendy, I just want to thank you for all those comments. I think it's incredibly important, and I'm happy that you felt confident and comfortable to be able to voice these concerns, and I'm sure they're taken under advisement. I'm going to continue with the presentation on the laws, but I'll encourage Chief Brandt and you, if there wants to be a follow-up conversation, I'll leave that to you to coordinate, or any other thoughts definitely can be sent over email, a phone call.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay, bye for now, Wendy. Okie dokie, I'm gonna head back over to where we left off, and we were just getting into the meat of the code of conduct. Sorry, code of ethics, excuse me. So the ECC, CCE, definitely having some dyslexia today. Anyways, the first core piece of this was the leadership roles and responsibilities. That's section 4. Again, there are 17 different provisions, but in some, it's about unifying the approach of council. It's about setting some standards that you need to be making decisions in the best interest of the community, and you need to be providing quarterly reports to the community, and any portfolios you're going to be leading are going to be led based on experience and skill sets. The next section would be section 5, and this is the standards of conduct. So this requires that council members act honestly, respectfully, and professionally, avoid harassment and discrimination. So this is a key piece. If you're employed somewhere, you most likely have a harassment and discrimination policy. That's a human resource policy. Because elected officials are at the governance level, those policies don't apply to them. So this is a way we're able to codify some of those standards and make them applicable to council. So under section 5, you have to avoid harassment and discrimination. You also need to maintain a level of professionalism on platforms and social medias. So they're prohibited from sharing content on social media that could be perceived as discriminatory, offensive, divisive, or reflect poorly upon Ganasatage. They're also under this required to follow all of the MCK laws, policies, and procedures. So just saying that the elected council members aren't exempt from the policies and procedures. There's a big section, section 6, on conflict of interest. This is always an important piece, especially in any First Nation. We have unique realities of what conflict looks like, so it's important for us to define. We're requiring that the council makes all efforts to avoid situations where personal interests could interfere with their duties. They'll also be required to disclose conflicts immediately and abstain from any discussions or votes that would be related to that conflict. So if there's a housing issue that's come to council, and one of the council members, it has to relate to their daughter, that's a conflict. They're going to disclose and saying, hi, this issue coming to the table relates to my daughter. I have a conflict. I need to abstain from the discussions and the votes. It also promotes transparency and fairness. So you really have to be working to your best ability to avoid a conflict of interest and to avoid the appearance of a conflict of interest. The next section are on the disclosure and employment rules. So the disclosure has a lot to do with the conflict policy. When you get into council, you're going to have to file an affidavit. So a statement, a sworn-in statement, saying that, hi, this is who I am, noting any financial interest. So if you have any controlling interest in a business on reserve, or an entity, or a family business, you'd have to be able to file those on record. That again just promotes transparency and honesty. It also allows us to know if there's a conflict or there will be a conflict, right? So if you get into council and you file your sworn statement saying, you know, my sister owns this business, great. Then we know if there's a business question relating to this coming up, there's a conflict and you're going to have to not be a part of that decision. There's also a big piece on employment, and this is really unique too, because often our communities are so small that the elected council members also hold an employment position within the council as well. Some communities, that's an issue with, some communities it's not. Under this code, employment by an elected council member is only allowed if there was an open competition held. So it can't be a closed decision of saying, we've created this director position, we've appointed XYZ. No, it needs to be appointed publicly. The competition needs to be open publicly. There needs to be a notice that we're now hiring for this position. We're accepting applications, and the elected council member would be able to apply. They also are only allowed that position if they have the fair qualifications and the compensation pieces are met as well. They also have to refrain from engaging any work or contractual relationships with businesses, organizations, or entities that have interests in matters previously held by council, and this has to do with a post-employment rule. So we're saying that once you're done serving on council, there is then a buffer period where you can't take the information you gained from council and execute it to a personal benefit. We also have section 9, which is use of information and property. So elected council members must not use confidential information for a personal benefit. You must not disclose any information without prior authorization, and you can't abuse MCK resources or property. Like, you can't take a bunch of laptops from the band hall and hoard them at home. So these are all pieces that are not exceptionally complicated. They really just set a standard that usually already exists on the human resource levels. It's being applied to the employees of the band. We're now just codifying them in law so they apply specifically to the elected council members. We also have a reporting and enforcement pieces. So this is section 10, reporting and council review, and section 11, penalties. So under your custom electoral code, you have the Ethics Commission. Over the last 2 years, council did a lot of work to develop the Ethics Commission. The authority of the Ethics Commission comes from the Electoral Code, which predates this mandate. But the Ethics Commission is really a body that's able to uphold the council to anything set out in the Electoral Code or anything set out here in the Code of Ethics. So reporting, if we think that there's been a breach, you're able to report the matter to the chair of the Ethics Commission. Council has the initial review, so they're not making the decisions regarding this, but they have the initial review. And the reason we set this out is for financial integrity pieces. The Ethics Commission is an independent body, so there's costs related to the Ethics Commission. So if every report came in and some of them being frivolous, you don't want them to going out to the Ethics Commission for a full-fledged investigation, as if we did that every time. It could be quite expensive. So the initial alleged breaches would be reviewed internally to determine whether or not it's substantive to go to an investigation. The Ethics Commission is then able to determine whether or not there was a contravention to this code. And there's some penalties under this. There's up to a fine of $5,000, and there's possible removal from office under the custom electoral code. So we don't provide any new measures for removing people from their elected position under this code, but it does exist in the custom electoral code. So that is something that predates us. Just a quick recap. This piece is really about that ethical and transparency. It's about ensuring we're upholding our disclosure duties and avoiding conflict. It's about setting a standard of reporting back to community, and it's about upholding the policies that are already being applied. I'll just pause for a second because I'm going to jump into the trespass law next. So if there is any comments, I see a comment. How will the Ethics Commission enforce these policies? So the enforcement would be related to the investigation. So we can sometimes work backwards. So if we start at that, yes, there's been an infringement of the Code of Ethics determination, that would have been determined by an investigation. An investigation happens because there was a report that there was a contravention to this code. So it could be from someone else on council saying that, hi, there is another council member that is violating the Code of Ethics. And then if that violation was serious enough, it would require an investigation. And then the Ethics Commission would then determine if a fine would be enough or if we would need to look at a removal from office. And just to note, the Ethics Commission is an independent party comprised of expert judges and lawyers. So it is not a simple body. It's a very strong enforcement measure. Is there anything you wanted to add there, Chief Brand?
Not really, but I think Kay Cree has her hand up, or has their hand up.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me?
Hi, we can.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks for the presentation. I had a few questions. Just wanting to understand better it's section 4.13, where you say that, I guess it's, council members will cast their votes in the best interest of the community. And then it says the Grand Chief shall serve solely as a tiebreaker for resolutions. What does that mean? Does it mean that the Grand Chief doesn't vote ever unless it's to break a tie?
No, well, yes and no. If the issue here is that the Grand Chief is still the same service level as Chief themselves. So their vote would count if there is a tiebreaker. So it doesn't mean they can't vote necessarily, but if in the instance there was a tie, their vote would be the breaking of that tie. And I see Chief Brandt's hands up, so I'll let him jump in.
Yeah, that's pretty much how it is now. Like say for some reason, currently a chief is absent and there's only 6 people, or no, say okay, say all 7 chiefs are present. The chair, which is presumed to be the Grand Chief or whoever's sitting as chair, votes last. So it'd go through all other 6 chiefs, and if there's 3 on one side, 3 on another, the deciding vote is the Grand Chief, sort of essentially. I don't
Okay.
know if they're. I don't think it's counted as 2 votes in any way.
No, they're the
And
last
I
to
don't
go.
think. Yeah, and I don't think there's any way to abuse it, or to my knowledge.
Yeah, that's I think the best way to put it. Thanks, Chief Brandt. They abstain
Okay.
to the last vote, so they're the final decision.
Okay, but so if there is no tie, they're still voting, right?
Yes.
So I'm
The
concerned with the way the 4.13 is worded because it really sounds like the only time the Grand Chief will ever vote will be if there's a tie, and that's not what I'm understanding is the case. So anyways, but thanks for
That's great.
clarifying, because
No, thank you for raising that because we want to make sure that things are clear, so that's something we can amend in the next draft.
okay. The other thing about the reporting, when I read, what I understand is that so the chair of the Ethics Commission is going to make an inquiry into like any complaint. And then the chair will report to the council. But then I don't see anything else where the Ethics Commission is making a recommendation or is deciding. So is it the case that it's in the end it's the council that decides on the matter?
This is a great question. So this is one of those pieces that this code has to be read in relationship to the custom electoral code, which also lays out the responsibilities of the Ethics Commission.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, which is again one of these things about law drafting and legalese is that these all work together in layers. So basically what that means is if this is something that was of, could have been handled within council, like maybe there, somebody got upset and said something publicly, maybe that report would happen by council resolution, a decision to be like, you need to issue an apology. You need to issue a public apology, and that's been documented by the council on that resolution. But that deciding resolution could also mean that they're passing this off to the Ethics Commission. So by resolution, they're saying that this is a complicated matter that needs to be independently handled by the Ethics Commission. So that outcome would be decided by resolution within council. And there's just that what that decision could be is broad, right? From maybe requiring an apology letter to saying the Independent Ethics Commission needs to be engaged.
I guess it's at 10.3 where it says council shall hear matters relating to alleged violations, and then outcomes will be decided by I guess resolution of the council. It seems to I don't know, it's not clear like who a complaint will go to. It sounds like it always goes to council, but then above it talks about the ethics commission. So it's like it's not clear the chronology, like how it happens. Do you know what I mean? Because initially it talks about the ethics commission making the inquiries, and then after it says the council is going to hear all matters to relating to alleged violations. So
Yeah,
Who's
that's a great
hearing
flag.
things? Is it the Ethics Commission or is it council? Because it seems to, like, the two sections seem to be saying the same thing, being done by two different entities.
That's a great flag. I'll look into rewording that, but the effect of this is basically there's two distinct things happening.
Mhm.
We just have to say you're making an immediate report, but that report will go to the Ethics Commission, but the initial hearing will be heard by the council.
Okay, so I
But
guess
I
maybe
do,
ten point three
that's not
should,
clear, so that's
yeah,
something that I'm making a note to revisit in the next
yeah,
drafting phase. And we do want to keep a little bit of flexibility because what the report looks like, we're not going to define in a law because it could change so quickly, right? So most likely
mhm,
will be a form that goes to the Ethics Commission email, and then that. So the actual process piece doesn't get detailed in a law. That would end up being
mhm.
detailed into a policy once the law is already enforced.
Okay, okay, well, thanks for that.
Yeah,
And the
no,
last
thank you
thing
so much
is,
for that, for those questions.
yeah, that I don't
Back.
think I've seen the possibility of amending this law. If I look at the bottom, like coming into force, is there a provision that provides for that? Because
Yeah,
there is.
Yeah, it's the KLMP, or I'll leave it to Saber. I think that's
yeah,
what she's gonna say.
all the laws that are enacted under the KLMP are required per the KLMP to go through the same process to amend or repeal.
Okay,
And so that links back to the whereas clauses that sets out where the powers are derived from. And so because this is governed under the KLMP, it means that the KLMP states that anytime we amend a law, repeal a law, we have to go through the same process that we're going through now before we can do that.
okay. I just wonder if it, like, I don't think it would hurt to indicate at the bottom of the law that it can be amended pursuant to the, what is it, the Ganessatage lawmaking process?
Yes, exactly.
And
You got
and
it.
and actually I was thinking about that when Wendy was talking. I agree that it's a little surreal to be in a meeting and there's only two attendees. Um, but sometimes, like, I think, as the chief was saying, it's important to have laws so that we can actually start, um, implementing requirements that people from the community are bound to and have to abide by. If there's no law, nothing moves. And sometimes when the law is actually implemented, even if there hasn't been much feedback from the community, once it's implemented is sometimes I would think when we start getting feedback because people start having to apply it. Some people might end up, receiving notices or whatever, and then people start showing interest and voicing their concerns. So I think maybe it's a better option to get these laws out there and still be open to amending them, depending on how it goes through, like during the implementation. Anyways, that's all I wanted to share.
Thank
Thank
you so
you.
much. Such a great flag. These are all great comments. Really helpful because we will be doing edits to this draft before the next round of next steps. So thank you so much. Having clarity is very important. Anything you wanted to add, Chief Grant, before I jump into the trespass law? Okay, okay. Okay, so we're moving into our second law, which is the trespass law. So this really regulates land access with the intention of protecting community health and safety. So land, community health and safety. The similar layout, the first section or section 2, you'll see is the key definitions. Nothing too crazy. The only thing I'll flag here is that the legal occupier has the legal ability to control the premise. So if you're the leasee at a house or the owner of a house, you're the legal occupier of that home. Authorized person. We used a term here called authorized person, and authorized person is who MCK appoints as the authorized person. And there's flexibility in that because we wanted it to cover peacekeepers, security. If maybe as a result, we've appointed director of law person, they could be considered an authorized person. So there's just some flexibility as the terminology of who we want to be authorized can change and look different to communities, especially as we work towards maybe having your own police force. You'll see authorized person in pretty much all the laws. So section 3, prohibited purposes and trespass. So a person who does any of the following commits an offense to trespass. So enters the land or premises after the person has been given notice that they can't be on the land. Okay, so after they've been told they can't be there, if they re-enter, that's considered trespass. If they're disobeying any oral or written directions, that could be considered trespass. Entering again after removal, after being removed, or engaging in any prohibited activity without permissions. Nothing too complicated, just seeing if I missed anything here. Again, this trespass law is drafted off a lot of precedents. Trespass law is something that you see a lot in common law on a provincial level. It's a real standard, so we've applied a very similar standard here. There's some defenses to trespass. So this really works in tandem. They're narrow defenses, but if they've had a permission from both the occupier and the MCK, or if they acted under lawful authority like the police. So for example, I have an aunt in Gunnestoga. Let's say my aunt goes on vacation. She's asked me to come watch her dogs and house sit. And so I'm there house sitting. I'm in the backyard. You know, it's evening time. One of the neighbors, you don't recognize me. You think I may be trespassing. You know my aunt has left for vacation. You didn't know somebody who has asked to house sit. So you're concerned. You call security saying, I'm worried that somebody's trespassing. They come and they say, hey, what's your name? And I go, oh, well, I'm Saber. And they're like, why, you know, what are you doing here? And I'm like, oh, well, I have permission from my aunt. She's asked me to house sit. And they go, oh, okay. So now I have a defense to trespass, right? I'm not trespassing because I've had permission from the occupier and I'm not guilty. So that's an example of how these defenses and pieces work, right? Whereas let's say I was just wandering around, let's say, yeah, I'm wandering around Gunnestoga. I enter into private property, and then the neighbor calls security. They come and they say, "Hey, who are you? What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Oh, well, I'm, here doing this and that." And they're like, "Okay, well, you're on private property. You need to leave this property. You can go over here." And I go, "No, I'm not leaving this property. I'm looking at the trees here. I'm perfectly happy here. I'm refusing to leave." In that instance, I'd be disobeying oral or written direction to leave from an authorized person, and then I could be ticketed or fined or committing offense trespass. Section 5 is methods of posting or giving notice. There has to be notice that you're trespassing. So the most simple way of this would be coming onto Gunnestoga land. There needs to be signage when you enter Gunnestoga land and when you exit Gunnestoga land. Because in that case, then I would know I am now on Gunnestoga land. So there could be an issue of trespassing. They have to be posted. So the signage has to be posted in daylight under normal weather conditions. It has to be, you have to be able to view it. It could be given orally or written. That's the notice piece. Oh, Chief Brandt, I see your hand popped up. Do you want to jump in?
No, I was just gonna call out Wendy asked what do you mean when you say security?
Do you want to jump in on that?
I think you were gonna hit on it in a moment. But essentially, if Saber didn't already say it, essentially it's anybody with an authorized like a peace officer. Right now it could be the KPS. It could be police officers, essentially anybody given the mandate to act as security in Gunnestoga. Right now, that would probably be KPS.
Yeah, sorry, I was using security interchangeably for KPS, but my vision there would be that KPS would be an authorized person as the interim until there was a police force eventually developed. And so KPS would have come and probably asked me why I was trespassing. A couple pieces here. So you have to be given notice. So there needs to be noticed for people to know that they're trespassing. And this could be done through signage based, for example, coming onto Ganastari land, or could be oral or written. So you may have an instance where you're receiving both an oral warning and then a written piece saying you're trespassing and you're being asked to leave. That would be considered notice. You've now been given notice that you could possibly be trespassing. And if you continue to do so, you're then committing an offense. So these pieces are important to note because if you don't know you're trespassing, you can't be charged with a trespass offense. So for example, my piece on my aunt's property, if I was in Ganastagi staying at my aunt, KPS came and said, you are trespassing, you are on somebody's property, that's considered giving notice. If I didn't know before, I knew then as of that moment that in fact, I'm being put on notice that I could possibly be trespassing. And then my defense to that was, oh, I'm actually house sitting for my aunt. I have permission to be here. And then therefore I'm not trespassing. So those are some pieces you can check out. That also, Chief Brant, if you can flag if there's questions in the chat, that's really helpful. I don't have the chat open while doing this. Trespasser identification. So this is the piece where if I refuse to give my name, I could be considered trespassing. So if you have an authorized person, for example, KPS, and they receive a report that there's somebody trespassing and they go up and say, hi, like, what's your name? Just an FYI, you're on Ganasatake land and you know, you're doing something that's prohibited. This could be considered trespass. And they go, you know what? Hell with you. I'm not giving you my name and address. I'm not telling you anything and I'm refusing to leave. That could be an offense under trespass. There's also ways to issue additional offenses. So let's say they first say, I'm issuing you a ticket for trespassing right now. And then they go, well, that's fine. I'm still not leaving after you do that. You could issue a second offense here. So trespasser identification is a piece for the authorized person to say, hi, you need to be able to disclose your name. And that's section 6.
Yeah. Wendy just had a follow-up. Her statement is, I think the community has to be surveyed as their property is not divided correctly. I think she means the land surveying actual boundaries is a little bit iffy here sometimes.
Yeah, that's a great flag. Okay, so enforcement and penalties, I'm going to go a little bit deeper into this one, and then that way I don't need to do the other ones. The enforcement and penalties are mirrored in all of the laws. There are reasons we mirror them in all of the laws. Some of them are around just reasonableness. So this is a strict liability offense, which means it's punishable on summary conviction. And so Ganasatake has the power in summary conviction as part of 27 of the section 27 of the Criminal Code or the Contraventions Act. And so that's really detailed under KILGA and the Governance Code, the Governance Act, that says these are ways that you can enforce your laws. So we have some limitations that we're working with. This is one. So again, most criminal code violations are summary convictions. There's only 2 types of punishable pieces when you look at the criminal code. It's either a summary conviction or it's an indictable offense. A summary conviction, you can only imprison up to 2 years less a day, and you can only issue fines up to $5,000. Indictable offenses are limited for serious crimes like murder, so homicide. It has to be of like really grave impact and danger to be an indictable offense. And there's very, very few in the criminal code that can get to that level. So the majority are summary convictions. And so that's where we fall. We have the jurisdiction to say, hey, we can punish on a summary conviction. Most of the time, especially for first offenders or second time offenders, it's either a minor fine or community service or restitution. So that's where we're getting the penalties provisions from. It also means that in the criminal code under summary conviction, the court of competent jurisdiction is the Court of Quebec. And that's different than Indigenous law in general. Indigenous law as a whole, you'll see that those are heard usually under the federal court. Because this is an issue of criminal law, it's heard under the Court of Quebec. So I'd just like to make that clear. Each day of an offense could be a new charge. That's a good important provision there. So if you have been asked to leave for trespass, you've been issued a trespass offense, and you continue to stay, you could be given additional offenses, right? So you could have 5 trespass offenses for refusing to leave. So you'll see that provision there as well. Trying to think, the other piece there too is that we say it can be heard by a court of Quebec, which is the court of competent jurisdiction. It also could be heard by a justice of the peace or until MCK establishes their own court system. So these are some aspirational provisions. We don't have a justice of the peace appointed currently, and we don't have our own court systems. But we want to include those because you never know. Maybe things change, and then in the next few years, you do have a justice of the peace or you do have your own court system. So we want to ensure that in that case, you would be able to enforce your own laws. But for the time being, under the Contraventions Act, you'd be able to enforce these under the Court of Quebec. Hi, Chief Brand.
Yeah, so Wendy was actually pertinent to this. I was of the understanding that without a community courthouse, we cannot legally fine people or give tickets. Can you clarify? And then follow up, but until then, you can fine anyone. And until then, you can fine anyone. So I think that was in relation to what you were saying towards the end about the courthouse, or can't fine anyone. So I think this relates to the last bit that Saber was talking about after you submitted your question, Wendy. The ticketing authority doesn't come from there being a courthouse or not here, or a justice of the peace being appointed. It comes from the law. We didn't have any laws beforehand that allowed us to ticket. We were relying on provincial and everything like that. But now, hopefully, we'll have laws in place, and they include ticketing provisions. That's what allows us to ticket. The actual, like Saber was saying, having it heard in front of a judge, if it has to go through all of that stuff and everything, like if it actually goes in front like that, will be a bit more complicated. It'll have to be brought to a provincial court unless we manage to have a justice of peace appointed, or go into an agreement with another community like Anawaga or Akwesasne or something like that to share resources. But it's the law itself that gives the ticketing authority.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I missed anything.
No, that's exactly it. So very similarly, it would be the same process as if you got a fine elsewhere. The enforcement measure would have to be enforced by the Court of Quebec. And hopefully you've never had to have this happen, but let's say you did, you were punished under a summary conviction and you were convicted, and a judge, you went through the courts and the judge said, you're now convicted of a fine of $5,000 and you have to do 30 days community service. That fine is then registered with the local sheriff's office, who has the ability to collect or enforce. So it'd be the same process under the Contraventions Act here. I think it's very important to understand this piece too, because it's mirrored in all the other laws. So I will not cover them so in depth in the next couple ones. A couple summaries and key takeaways. It's really about clearing a process for enforcement and ensuring safe land access and prioritizing community safety. I can't speak to the issues of the boundaries per se, but the general entering into Gamsatage land. I do find that I have worked with quite a few communities who do have an operational trespass law, and they have a pretty good time enforcing it when it comes to usually non-member issues, right? People entering into their territory, which they've posted a signage on a notice committing a prohibited act, and they're able to ask to leave and or issue a trespass offense, and that's upheld well.